I'm Drew Jackson, and you're listening to ThePrezEx TV.
Welcome y'all to another episode of the Presidential Executive. This your homie, the Exec JB. This my brother over here, El Presidente. Rag.
What's good? What's good?
What it do, man?
Y'all know what we do?
You know what we do, man. Kind of excited for this one.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a good one. So before we get into it, man, make sure y'all hit the like button, share, subscribe. Man, we want to give a shout out to all of our new subscribers in the last week, probably because of the last couple of episodes that we had with, between Player Tony and Righteous Raymer and Queen THC. We've got some new subscribers, so make sure y'all tune in. Y'all really going to want to tune in for this one. So like, share, subscribe. You know, our information is up here as always. And again, you can catch us on.
I got it.
We can't forget the list, man. We can't forget the list.
We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. And man, like I said, man, I'm kind of hyped for this because we have I want to say not an old, but just like a
man. It's like
a family reunion.
Yeah, it's like a family reunion, whether from church. I mean, even from me, like I've said, know my family longer than I've been alive. Right. You know what I'm saying? So,
and some things that when we had Black here,
right.
That I didn't know.
Black, DJ
you know what I'm saying? He said some certain, Mr. Andrew was first. I'm like, oh, really? I didn't, I didn't know none of that. So, without further ado, Rag, I think you need to be the one to do the honors on this.
So this guy, like I said, man, is like family to me. Man, he is a father. Was a husband for over 30 years, a grandfather now, minister of music for over 30 years. He had a song that came out. A lot of people don't remember. He was actually on the news after 9/11, but the song "We Are America," he put that song out, and he was on the news for that song. He is the father of the very talented Quintet Jackson Avenue.
Oh, Quintet.
That's 5. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Big word.
Yeah,
okay.
Oh yeah, I be in the words now.
Big word.
But he's the father of Jackson Avenue. They actually had some music on the Quincy Jones documentary. Yep. That he produced. He was kind of mentored by Willie Mitchell, who was Al Green's producer and kind of arranger of his stuff.
You schooling me, man. Keep going.
He was with Ebony Webb. He was did some work with the Barcades, but Ebony Webb was signed to Capitol Records at one point. He also had a band, Damascus Road. You know what I'm saying? So and he comes from a long line because he is a product of the Fannie Clark Singers, which locally kind of paved the way for gospel music in this area. So like this is the one, the only, like my people, my godfather, the one and only legendary, world famous, internationally known, Mr. Andrew Jackson.
Wow. Is that I'm learning more as I hear, like some of the stuff he ran down, like I knew how, your reach was in music and stuff, but I didn't know, some of the other things, you know what I'm saying? And so, but this is the perfect time.
A lot of fun,
to you know what I'm saying? Just to let, everybody know, like, because to me, I've been knowing you for years, you know what I mean? I can't even count. I'm 40, I'll be 41 in a couple of weeks. I mean, I don't know, probably since I was 9 or 10. I know, right? And so, and this is something new, I think, for all, because we've had talks in the past, and in church, out of church, and stuff like that. But this, I think, is probably a more intimate setting to where we can just just chop it up, diving in.
It's all fan. We even there's Crown Vic in here, even though he's not gonna say nothing. Like we got him back in the bit, so it's really gonna be lit because Crown Vic is back in the bit.
Yeah, see, it's been so long. I forgot you say Crown Vic in the building,
right.
It's been so long since Crown Vic been in the building. You know what I'm saying? But Crown Vic is in the building, so you know what I'm saying. It's good to have our brother back in here doing that. Ms. Andrew, how we like to do on the show? We like to start from the beginning, like from the genesis, like back like when you first began, and then I want to do something toward the end. We'll get there, like because you're a music guy, and and I want to know your. I want to know
Just giving us sound drops. Yeah, it's cool. It's a lot. It's live, y'all. It's live.
Yeah, and I want to know your perspective on certain things. But
Okay.
yeah, let's just start from the beginning. Like you from Memphis, where you like grew up, and all that good stuff.
Wow. Born and raised right here in Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up in South Memphis. I'm a South Memphian,
Yeah.
I don't care who know it.
Yep.
Got into music, played in high school band. Drumming is I started with drums.
Where'd you go to high school at?
Jeter was a high school a long time ago,
Oh, okay.
And got into drums. They got me a scholarship to UAPB, and before I went there, at 13, I started playing with this. It was a local band called the Twinites, and they were kind of coming up at the same time that the Barcades were coming up and Ebony Webb, and they didn't really make it that far, but they were a great group, and I learned a lot with that band.
That was a Memphis group.
Memphis group.
Memphis, okay.
Yeah, and then of course in the house, my mom played, all my aunts played, and they were ministers of music. So, like a regular day in our house was just going over music and singing, and they played for other groups that would come over to the house and rehearse. It was just music all the time. So, it was just easy to absorb all that. And so that kind of whetted my appetite for music. But it was still something cooking on the inside that wanted to take it further than what I was experiencing and seeing then. I didn't know how I was going to do that because we weren't allowed to listen to R&B radio or anything like that. So we would have to sneak in the back in the dark in the radio, right?
Yeah.
They had transistor radios then, you can believe that.
Yeah.
And so we would have it up to our ear and listening to different sounds, and that's how it began to develop. And sometimes you don't know that you're a creator of music. A lot of times there are great singers and great musicians, but they kind of mimic what everybody else is doing, or we do different things, like some are writers, some are producers, some are show bands or show musicians, and they do that stuff pretty well. But if you're a creator, it works a little bit different. It kind of comes from the inside, and you may not know how to just jump into all of that, but like I could feel it stirring even then. I knew that I wanted to kind of put music together, but I didn't know how to do it. And that would come later on when I began to meet different people, and God just started putting other people in my life that would show me how to begin to string it all together, and then the light came on.
And you know what? I forgot because he talked about going to UPAB, and he's also an alumnus of the U of M. But this is the guy who taught me how to twirl the cane. He is a proud member of the legendary. Yes, he's a noob.
He's a noob. Okay.
Yes, I forgot to mention that in the intro, but he is a distinguished brother of Kappa Alpha Psi.
Yeah.
Yep, I already know my brother
Actually, two
is too.
fraternities, Kappa Alpha Psi and Phi Mu Alpha, which is a music fraternity.
Okay.
But yeah, a long time ago.
Okay.
Long time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it all makes sense now because that's kind of been your home, how you in your home like music all the time.
All the time.
Pianos out, speakers out, you know what I'm saying, mics and all that stuff. So that pretty much kind of came from, kind of your upbringing. But I do want to go back because you actually said something that was interesting. So y'all wasn't like allowed to listen to like secular music growing up?
No. If you were in black churches pretty much at that time, that was just the culture. You just didn't do that. So everybody was sneaking into it.
Right.
But because the interest to learn something else was always there, so we were always reaching for it. And that, and then Stax was actually on the rise, and it was really hot then. I mean, you had people like Otis Redding, you had Eddie Floyd, you had William Bell, you had Carla Thomas, you had Rufus Thomas, and you had the Barcades, and all of the Stax stars were right there in the city, and so like they were just constantly spinning records. I mean. I worked with the owner of Stax for about a couple of years, Jim Stewart, and he said that they would cut records that night, and in the morning he would get them pressed, and they would be on the radio the next morning. So that's how fluid the Memphis music system was. Yeah, and you couldn't help but just be just piped, because there was new stuff always coming out. Yeah.
And so you did that, and were you like just playing the drums and music? Were you like singing too, or was it like both?
I wasn't singing then. My aunt's group, which Shay mentioned earlier, the Fannie Clark Singers, I started with them playing drums. I had a field snare, the kind that you strap on and march with. She bought me one of those, and there were no groups that were using drums in this city at that time. And so that was kind of a drawing card for the Fannie Clark Singers in the early days. We just had a group of singers, and she played the piano, and I just played the field drum, and later on graduated to a small snare on the stand. So that's where the drumming started, because I was in high school band, and we just kind of graduated to that level of working with vocals. So you kind of start putting drums and vocals together, and you start, okay, so like this works with this and this works with that. So it was kind of cooking then. Yeah. Yeah.
So around this time, was it like you was like meeting Miss Stacy around like college,
no.
or like you?
That would be years later. That was 1986 when we met.
Oh, word?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I just assumed y'all were like.
Oh no.
Before that, okay.
Yeah.
So this was like you was in 20s,
early 30s.
30s?
Early 30s.
Wow.
Yeah. She was in her 20s.
Okay.
She was 20. I met her at 25.
Okay.
And man, she was amazing. Well, I don't want to get into that right now.
Right.
But yeah, she was working she was working in the lobby bar. Funny story. Let me tell you about this story.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I jump there?
No, it's on you. Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
I was how we met, how God puts things together. I had just finished a recording session one night at the studio in South Memphis. A friend of mine had it. So I was packing up, leaving, putting my coat on, and it was this country and western group walked in who wanted to record a piece for a competition. And so he put me to the side. He said, "Drew, I don't know anything about country music." He said, "Please don't leave me here with these people." He said, "I'll pay you whatever you want."
Right.
So I went ahead and arranged the song for them because country was kind of my first love. I used to listen to Floyd Kramer. He was a country instrumentalist, pianist.
I'm about to Google him now because I don't.
Yeah, Floyd Kramer. But he just kind of piqued my interest early on, and so country was kind of my first love. I always thought they were the best storytellers in the world. They just could paint the pictures,
Sure.
And so, long story short, we did the session, and they won the contest. And when they won the contest, they had to perform the contest downtown at this venue. So they said, you did the arrangement, can you just come play with us? And I said, no, please. So I said, okay. When they played the arrangement with them, they won that. So the bass player never forgot that. Fast forward a few months later, he meets my would-be wife, Stacy, and she's looking for somebody to help her with some music. So the first name pops into his head. He said, I don't know where you can find this guy, but like, he's the guy you need. And
he's talking about you.
He's talking about me.
Okay.
And so now the other part of the story, this is how it's so funny how these things happen. This other friend of mine who's a world famous bass player now, James Kennard. Jimmy called me one day and said, man, my car broke down. He said, can you help me run some errands? He had never asked me anything like that. So I said, sure, get up, take him, run the errands. And he said, when you take me home, can you take me by the Peabody? I want to talk to this girl about fronting this band that I'm putting together. So I said, cool.
Wow.
Went by the Peabody, and she's the girl that he wanted to see. So I walk in the Peabody, and I see this gorgeous creature, out of the corner of my eye. And I was like, who is that?
Right there. Yep.
So, but we keep walking.
Yeah.
And so we go sit in the lobby bar, which is where she was working, and we asked for her, and the girl said, well, She's out right now, but she'll be right back. And so I look up and I see the same girl I saw in the Galleria walking toward us, and I said, "Wow, that's her." And so he spoke to her and say, "I'm putting this band together, and yada yada yada. I really want you to sing because she had been doing restaurants and clubs in the city at that time, and she was blowing people away because she had the look and she had the sound.
This was the 80s?
This was the 80s.
80s, okay,
right?
okay.
And it's around 1986 for us.
Okay.
I think we made it 85, but anyway, she was doing that. So he did his spiel, and she said, "Well, I just rededicated my life to the Lord, and I'm not doing that anymore." And so
That's what she said.
That's
That
what she
was-
said.
okay.
And I was like, "Wow, who is this?" And so he turned and said, "Well," he said, "This is my friend Andrew. He does Christian music too." And she said, "Jackson?" And I say, "Yeah." She said, "Somebody gave me your number to help me with some music." So it started with the Country and Western session.
Wow.
Connected with that, and won the contest, impressed the bass player. The bass player meets her at another day and gives her my number. And then this other guy, just out of the blue, asked me to take him, to run some errands, and that's how we connected.
James Kennard introduced him.
James Kennard, right.
His son Jason's one of my best friends.
Yeah. James and I
See, that's
go
why
back.
you need a mic crown Vic,
Right.
because James Kennard's son is one of Crown Vic's best friends. We needed that.
Yeah.
And he's
But
just
now we
over
gotta
there.
translate for him, 'cause he
Exactly.
ain't got the mic.
You got to put the captions at the
Yeah.
bottom.
And
of the
Jimmy
screen.
played bass for the Fannie Clark Singers for a while.
Okay.
So we, I was MD for that group. And later on, her son Derek, they had this group called the Norsemen from, what was it? I can't think of the school right now, but they were one of the greatest high school jazz bands in the country at that time. They were playing like professionals then. These are high school guys.
Wow.
And so he played keys for that band, and so we were like a left and a right hand, with that band. So James played with us doing that spiel.
So, like, I like to know like the details. So, when you and Miss Stacy met, were you even looking at the time? Like, were you like, or was it just kind of just like, it just happened or whatever? I don't want to,
No, when we met, I actually came home and I was standing in the back door. I went over to my mom's and I was talking to her, and I was standing there. I said, I met this girl today. I never talked to her about the girls, because
Right.
we just didn't do that, and I said, I could marry somebody like that, just like that. And
You said that just like that.
yeah, 9 months later, I did. We dated 9 months. We were married 34 years.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
It was fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, fast and by today's standards, but I mean,
Yeah.
back. I mean, and even like if you go further back, I guess to like maybe our parents or grandparents' generation, like
Right. They were
you
fast.
had people
right.
like 2 months,
Right.
or like they just grew up together. They never actually dated till like they graduated high school.
Right.
The summer after they
Right.
graduated, they were married. So,
I love it. Yeah.
so I
And
want to
stayed
get
together,
into
yeah.
That I mean that's
Yeah.
that's all we know.
Yeah. Right.
So you played drums from. You said you went to school on a drum scholarship, right?
Right.
Band scholarship, and so a lot of people who know you, whether it be from Breath of Life or just you arranging and playing, studio, producing, composing, arranging, they only know you playing the piano, playing keys.
Yeah.
I remember when Ben Tankard came to, Breath of Life, and he was like, and people was like coming up, of course, they trying to brown nose him. And he's like, man, y'all don't realize what y'all got here.
Wow.
He was like, I'm cold. He was like, but this guy, he was like, I can't hold a candle to, and I'm standing right there listening to him say this.
Wow.
Right. So
I didn't know he said that.
yeah, no, he said that. Now, keep in mind, like you remember at the time, like I was working on the janitorial staff at the church, so like I would always hear, like I'm around
conversation,
sweeping,
right,
right, mopping, and but like, so how did you go from being a drummer, and you probably heard this from people because I know a lot of band guys, drummers have a certain reputation.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like drummers generally are ladies' men, and
Yeah.
when I played in the band, like I was a drummer,
I don't know what it is about drums.
Yeah, I don't
but-
know yet. What is it? I guess it's something about the sticks or something like that.
It's the beat.
Right. You got rhythm. But how did you go from being a drummer? Stop laughing, Vic. How did you go from being a drummer to being a piano player, keyboard player, arranger, composer? How did that happen?
You know, it's funny. I was in college. I was a freshman at UAPB, and the keyboards were so prevalent in my family. Like everybody played piano, so I was around it all the time. But I never just got serious about it. I was a late bloomer. I was in college. I was a freshman, and I came in one evening from band, and like the band room and the choir room. One was on one side and one was on the other, and like after rehearsals, we all just kind of met in the same area and just kind of hung out. So this guy by the name of Donahue, he was also from Memphis. He was a senior at that time. He was sitting playing this jazz piece, and I was just floored. And I was like, "Man, can you teach me how to do that?" Mm-hmm. He took about 40 minutes out of his time and taught me the chords to that piece, and I just took off from there, I had a chance to thank him before he passed away, but you don't know who you're sewing into. He took about 40 minutes. This guy took about 40 minutes out of his. He could have said, "No, man, get away with me," the low freshman. But he took the time, taught me those chords. I still can play it today, But that was kind of the genesis or the impetus to what moved me from drums to keys, And after that, I started playing with this band in college, We do a reunion every now and then still, But yeah, that's where it started.
Yeah. No, I didn't even know you. Did I know you played the drums? I don't know. I don't think I did. I don't think I did know officially. Like I said, I was one of them people.
You
the
talk about
like I didn't.
So I remember it was something that the church was doing, and of course, and again, and I said this to Black, but I'm gonna say this to you, like, if it wasn't for you, we would have never had the opportunity to be up on the stage, at the church. Like, that was kind of our first platform before we were doing anything else. So like MKJ and all these other people came afterwards. Mm-hmm. Like, y'all got this man to thank because he kind of opened the door even for like one accord.
Right, yeah.
But we were preparing for the gig, and he was up there like, he wasn't just playing the drums. Like, he was just sitting up. He was just going. Like, we had our song playing, and he's playing the actual drum to the beat. And I'm like, I said, "Man, Mr. Andrew, I didn't know you know how to play this." He said, "You didn't know that?" He said, "I was always a drummer." He's like, "Man, I was a drummer before I played the piano."
Yeah, it's almost like a natural progression, Like most people that play drums end up moving the keys or guitar and something like that. So, but yeah, you had a cold band, man, like cold group. Yeah.
No, I know. Well, see, that's even the thing, like, with because that was the day you asked me, like, you asked me how my uncle was doing.
Yeah.
And I was like, and so again, I knew it right. He was like, man, man, I didn't know, like, come on, Shay, like, I know all of your folks. And so, but even with that, like my uncle and all of them, being with the music and everything like that. Yeah. So you go from the drums to keys, playing the piano. And so, and JB asked you this earlier, but like, at what point, so now that you're doing the keys, do you at this point now start your own band, or you start singing? Like, how did you go now from that to, because again, you got several bands, that you were with and a part of and everything. So like, after you leave college, like, what's the next step, for you in terms of your musical journey?
Actually, like the first band started. The first band was the Savannah Clark Singers, but they were just singers at that time. They didn't become a band until I left college and came back to be the MD for that group. But in college, there was another band called the Regiment of Sound, and so with the regiment, we were four guys. They had this place, this abandoned. Not abandoned, but like it was the old auditorium because they had just built a new one, and they had this piano, and you would go in and practice. I would stay in there maybe from midnight to maybe like 6 o'clock in the morning, just practicing. And there was this guy. He's from New Orleans, so he would come in, and he'd be on one side of the stage, and I'd be on the other. So we would just kind of play all night. We didn't say anything to each other for days. And then finally he came over and said, "Say, man, what's your name?" And so his name is Stephen Foster. But he was here during like what was the big storm that they had in New Orleans?
Oh, Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, he came here and started the band here. Then, but he's an amazing arranger. He's a business guy. But that started like the college band, and it was a four-piece band. So we got really popular around the campus. We would play at different events and different clubs in the city and stuff like that. So that kind of got me into arranging and like vocalizing and top 40 stuff. And so when I left college, came back home and got with my aunt's group, then we just kind of put another band together, and that kind of expanded because the drummer for that band came home with me, and he became the drummer for the Fanny Clark Singers. His name is Bill Spears. So you went from one band, and then it moved to the next stage, and you started learning more and doing more and arranging more, and then studio kind of kicked in. So that's where the studio would start. Was with the Fanny Clark Singers. We did that first album, which was. It's still out there. I cringe sometimes when I listen to it because we didn't really know a lot, but people are buying that album for $50 and $60 and $70 a pop right now, and I was like, wow, but it's legendary Memphis music, and I saw this article from France that they were featuring like all the Fanny Clark Singers stuff. So it's all around the world right now. But yeah. That band started, here in Memphis College, and then Memphis.
So were you signed like to a label at any point?
We weren't signed then. We would be signed our third album. That's when Willie Mitchell comes into the picture.
Willie Mitchell.
We were signed to not Gospel Centric. What was it? The Clark Sisters was signed to the same label, but it was a label out of Detroit. I can't think of the name of it right now, but we signed. Willie Mitchell produced that album called "Wonderful Love." Had the opportunity to write the title tune to that album, and we signed to what's the name of the label? But anyway, he produced that record, and that's when we actually got signed. Okay. But it was a national label, and like the music was on national airplay and rotation every day at the time.
So you're in your 30s when all this is going down.
My 30s, right?
In your 30s.
Well, actually, I was in my 20s when all this started happening.
Okay.
I would meet Stacy in my 30s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you did that, and so now, I mean, let's get like. And how did you go from there to being the maestro of music? You know what I'm saying? Coming to where we're from at Breath, because I'm sure you had to be, pretty young at that time.
Early 30s. Like when I met my wife, we got married May 30th, 1987, and May 31st, she joined Breath of Life with me, and so.
Hold on, say the timeline again.
Yeah, May 30th, 1987.
That's when you got married.
When we got married, it was a Saturday, and
right.
that's I had been there maybe about a month then, just brand new, still learning stuff, and
out there in North Memphis at the time. Was that
right?
Like that was first
on Perez,
yeah.
right?
Yep. Okay.
And she joined the next day, and we just kind of hit the ground running like that,
Yeah.
And so. Things were still kind of new because I had come out of a professional background. This would be after the Ebony Web and like all that stuff.
Right.
So it was almost like starting over from scratch because you were starting with a brand new group of people, and skill levels are different. And when you play professionally, you're used to pretty much one skill level. Like you can just say this is what it is. It's an E flat. 7 flat 9. It's or like you're singing like the third, and then the seventh, and then the second, and people know what you're talking about. But like this was a complete like you had to just roll up your sleeves and get down in the trenches and spoon feed because they weren't used to that language.
Yeah.
And so, by the grace of God, we learned a different language of how to communicate music to people that didn't have that background, and it's a humbling experience, because most guys wouldn't even want to deal with, coming from that kind of background.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even want to deal with people at who were at that level. They were great people and smart people, but they just didn't have that musical background. So they had to be kind of shaped into a group for what God wanted to do at that time at that church. And so
Right.
that's how we do it.
You being, because you mentioned, before this, you being with Ebony Webb, and so being in that professional background, like you go from being basically gospel your whole life primarily,
Right.
to now you're working more in the secular arena.
Right.
And so I guess the question I have, because we talked about this with Black, I've talked about this. We've had, I don't know if you're familiar with Fro. We kind of talk, when we had the music people, we kind of talk about this. Like, was the move to do secular, was it just strictly because you just had the hunger for the music? Or was it more like when you were doing gospel, you were just doing gospel because that's all you knew?
That's a very good question. When how I got to Ebony Webb, I had admired that group from an early age, but because they went through maybe about 2 or 3 evolutions. But what I admired about them, and I was like pretty young, but it was obvious. Those guys, they arranged their own music. They made their own clothes. They put their own outfits together, and they did their own touring schedule. They didn't need anybody. They didn't even need to sign a record deal at that time. They didn't know it then, But they were that progressive even back in the day. And so when they heard a tape that I had done, because the guy I was working with, when the new group hit, I think they had a couple of records in the top 20 in R&B in the country at that time. So he started working as a roadie for them. So coming back on the bus at night, he would play what we were working. He would play what we were working on in the studio, and somebody said, "Who's playing keys?" And so he said, "Oh, it's Andrew Jackson." And so the guy, my neighbor that I grew up with, we're like sister and brother. She was married to one of the members of Ebony Webb, still married to him. And he said, "Andrew," he said, "he and my wife grew up like sisters and brothers." And so so he came over the next day and said, "Hey man, like the group want you to audition." And so making that move was, you always feel that, but because you know where you come from, but you still want to reach further and see what else you can learn. So for me, it was a learning experience, but it wasn't letting go of what I knew about the Lord or anything like that. I just really wanted to see what else I could learn, because I never really played with a band of that caliber on a big stage.
Yeah.
So it was the hunger of just wanting to have that experience, just to see what it was like, And then it would be with a group that I had admired for like a lot of years. And so when I passed the audition, like the manager came and said, "Hey man, the guys like you. You got the gig if you want it," So played with them for a while, But once I got in the group, it's funny how God does things. We took a tour to the Far East, and man, everybody that nobody wanted me to go because it was like, well, Andrew is going to the other side now. He's left God, and he's out there in the world,
Now, when you say that, you just talking about like this, the church world, or are you talking about just
church friends, family.
Okay.
They didn't really want me to make that move, But I was sensing, like the only person, this is funny, I always laugh because the only person that agreed with me, can I say this? I guess yeah. He was one of the biggest cocaine dealers in the city, but he was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And so he's the only one that said, "Well, Drew, you got to obey God." So it's funny how those things happen. So I went and I told the Lord, I said, I'll go if you would give me time with each one of them on tour. And that was the deal I made with God. And we were over there for almost 4 or 5 months. And during that 4 or 5 month period, there would come a day when we were off, and we would always start out together. And during that whole stay, there were times when everybody would just fall away, and I would be left with each one of them. And I had a chance to share. And one of those guys is preaching now. Two are passed away, but like all of them that I know of, I haven't heard from 2 of them, but all the rest of them got saved. You know, I remember like the drummer called me one night, like 12 o'clock, and he said, "Drew, guess what, man? This guy, he was." You ever hear like professional cussing? This guy was a professional. I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
he had words that I didn't even know about, and I'm from South Memphis.
Right.
You know? But he called me one night, and he said, "Drew," he said, "guess what, man?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I got saved," and I said, "Really?" And so, but God was dealing with them. So the whole thing about going into that, to answer your question, was God, I believe, was leading me into that, like to affect their lives. And so that's when I learned, like another light went on at that point. It was like, okay, so this is how God works, as long as I'm staying with him. And that's why when I see people in the entertainment industry right now, but they're in their world, but they're affecting the plan and purpose of God. Now it's a thin line to walk.
Right.
You really have to
sure.
be locked in
You do.
to walk that line, because everybody can't walk it.
Yeah.
And then you still have to hold fast to the standards that that don't bring shade on the body of Christ or the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So that was the place I was in at that time. But I learned that, okay, so God can work like this too. I didn't know that before. And like it would be at the homegoing services of like one of Ebony Webb's band members, that the guy that was preaching, he came and said, he said it was what you shared with us in Japan. Now this would be 30 some years later before I actually knew. I felt it, but like I wouldn't hear it until over 30 years later. He said it was what you shared with us in Japan that got us to where we are right now. And that's when I knew it was God. I always felt that it was, but he
It was confirmation.
Yeah.
Did you ever have like aspirations, like when you was growing up, to be like or something, or something within the music industry? Did you have a vision like of what you thought what you wanted your career or whatever to look like?
Yeah, I always wanted to. I really wanted to do what Quincy Jones was doing. I was finishing my homework one night, and we always had albums in the house, and I flipped over an album on the floor when I finished, and Quincy Jones' band was on that album. And then when I saw that he wrote scores for movies and television, I said, that was the first time that I had seen somebody look like me that did that kind of thing. And I said, man, like I think I want to be a score writer for movies and television. So back to college, if I can roll that back a little bit, I started working with theory and orchestration, and learning how to write for ensembles and string ensembles and orchestras and that sort of thing, and further that at U of M when I came there. So like that was the bug that kind of bit me during that time, to expand it, not to just be on the stage. So all this time you're gathering different aspects of the industry and growing. I still orchestrate. I don't get a chance to do it right now because I don't. I do arrangements for like studio and that sort of thing. But that's a gig that I really love, that I don't get a chance to do a whole lot these days. But yeah, that was the other side of that.
So now we said this before, and this has been my big gripe with a lot of the guys who do gospel rap or holy hip hop here, but it's like a lot of them, you're not really good enough to do secular, so you're doing it. And so, and so I asked you because the difference is
real,
with you,
no,
real, for real. Like a lot of because they want to be secular, but you either don't have the street credit, you're not as nice as you think you are.
It's an easier road to travel.
You know what I'm saying? So you're going, and then you're mad because people don't want to buy your CDs or stuff. You know, right? Exactly. But it's like,
real,
you know, you may not be all that good, or you know, you don't work on the craft.
Yeah.
You know, you think just because you go in the studio and make a song, people supposed to buy it, but you don't spend time.
Or because you say Jesus,
Right.
Like everybody in church gonna buy
Exactly.
your right.
And so here it is, kind of for you, it was the opposite. Like you were doing gospel, but you were actually good enough to be over in this arena. And so I know we're going back to now where you're heading to.
I know I'm going back and forth.
No, you good. Yeah, because we want to get, it's so much to get.
It is, man.
Like, so when you were with the web, like what are some of the artists that you got to work with? Because I know they were big in the Memphis scene, and then you all got to tour around the world. So like, what are some of the artists you got to work with on your journey going back to that?
Let's see. We were on tour. I know Cool in the Game, Cameo, of course. We didn't work with the Gap Band, but like we were all contemporaries on the road. Midnight Star was on the road with us. Man, there were so many. Of course, the Barcades. There was a group called Quick, which my brother-in-law was a member of that group. We never dreamed that we would be family, you know. Who else? There were a whole group of anybody who was anybody at that time. We practically ended up on stage at some point at some arena with them. If not on tour with them, we were on the same show with them because that's how those circles run, you know. But we ended up mostly with Cool and the Gang and Cameo, and I can think of there were so many men. But yeah,
You've been on stage with those, you know, those type of, you know, as you look at it at this point in time, iconic artists. Like, what was that feeling at that point then, or just looking back now? Because maybe then, did you know they weren't? Well, maybe Kool and the Gang was at that point. They were that. You know
they
what
were
I
there.
mean?
Yeah.
But like looking back on it, or even at that moment, like, how was that moment? Like soaking it in. Like, were you? What was your perspective? Like, you were like, wow. Like, or did you soak like some game up from, or just from being around them? You know what I mean?
Learning, taking it all in, watching the cues on stage, watching how the show worked, watching what the MD did, and like you know how they moved the show, watching how they put it together to go from 0 to 100 and get the crowd involved. You know, like you were learning all the aspects of stage performance. Because those guys, they all did it well, and we went on tour with Earth, Wind and Fire, but like I went to all their shows, and so you know, like I'm not just there as a fan; I'm there watching to see, okay, how do they do this? You know, how do they put this sound together? What should it sound like on stage? You know, like what kind of players do you need? What level of players do you need to like get to that level? You know, and so you're learning all these things, and that was my main. I was a student. Like that whole time, it was I was the fly on the wall guy.
Yeah, I mean, because again, this is like it's kind of, I don't want to use the wrong word here, but it's kind of mind blowing because you know you come from a musical family, you know, and you get to do that, and so you know, it's funny because you see a guy like Quincy Jones, so I know you can't imagine that I'm doing. You know, I'm in this whole gospel arena because that's something completely different.
Completely right.
You know, and I know, like for me, like learning to rap, like I was sneaking. You know, I wouldn't get to listen, but I would sneak and listen to Rakim and Public Enemy. You know, and but he bought us the Bible break tape, and that's how I learned how to rap, and then I you know learned all the books of the Bible from that. But like I didn't want to be a gospel rapper per se. Like I wanted to be Rakim. You know what I'm saying? It went from Rakim to I want to be Tupac. You know, and then I was like the 6th member of Bone Thugs and Harmony. You like that was the way I saw me, and so I kind of went, you know, the opposite way because I knew, you know, Roche and Teresa wasn't going. The only way I'd be able to do it is that. So it's mind blowing to hear you go from, I guess, the gospel to that, and then
Back.
because you never really left it, you know. I guess you, like, it was always in your heart.
Right.
So now, how do you get from, because we is where JB brought up. So now, how do you get from being with the web to now? Because I guess you never really, I guess, fell away from the Lord.
No.
So what was the progression of now you getting back into doing gospel music and being back in that arena, and then now to being where what we knew you were for over 20 some years?
I think it was the call of God. I have been working with Willie Mitch. We work shoulder to shoulder every day. I learned the art of production from him. God just began to deal with my heart, and I was quiet about it because I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I wanted to get closer in my walk with him, but I didn't want to do it in a religious way and just, we know the phrases, we know the cliche, we know the church lingo, and I had grown up with all that stuff, but
blessed and highly favored.
Blessed
and all
and
that,
Yeah.
Right, you make one step, and then you make two. And
Christianese.
Right.
won't he do it?
All those things.
Right.
But I didn't want that. I knew in my heart that there was something deeper, and then I felt that he wanted something from me. I just didn't know what it was, and so I went to Willie and I said, man, I think God is calling me. So. I just want to thank you for the, and we remain friends. Like I was there like a day before he died. But like I just shared with him, and I would share the gospel with him. And he said he was already a Christian, and so I began to pull away from it. Not because I thought it was anything bad or anything like that. I just felt the call of God, and He was leading me in a different direction, and I didn't know where I was going at the time. I was just taking it day by day,
That's what I want to ask you. Well, I think you're answering as you're going now, because just from the outside looking in, everything that you said, we looking like, dang, why didn't you just, go on the band or be, in a big, secular band or be on those stages with those type of people, since you have those type of skills and talent. So you're answering it right now, like you felt it was a call, from God to pull back
right
from the industry, not because you were like, this is the devil's thing or whatever like that.
It was nothing like that.
Okay.
It was an itch that needed to be scratched, and it was a hunger that the big stage didn't satisfy.